So now we need an empty circle for all of the labels that aren't checked right now. If we go to Font Awesome, we can probably find something that'll fit for this. So I'm going to do a search for circle. And if we look down the options, we have this empty circle here. We also have a thin version. And I think judging from the design, we're probably going to want the thinnest we can get. Okay, so we'll go over here to our styles, and I'm going to copy this before, and we'll paste it in the label here. Now we want to keep the Font Awesome font. We do want to change the content though to the thin circle. So I'll go over here and I'll copy everything between the X and the semicolon. We'll paste it after the backslash. We probably want to keep the same font size and same margin, but the color, let's just leave it at the default for now and see if that works. So I'll save that and jump back to the browser and refresh. Okay, so we have our circles, and if we check, they turn into check marks. Now this O looks a little bit too dark, so let's lighten it up a bit. So I'll jump to our color palette, and I think we probably want something along the lines of light gray or medium gray. Let's start with light gray and see how that works. So we'll add a line here for color, set it to light gray, save it, and refresh in the browser. All right, so that looks a lot closer. The thickness of the circle isn't as perfect as we'd like, but I think that's gonna be okay for now. It looks a little bit blurry in comparison with this, not quite as sharp. But I don't think we have a thinner icon that we can use, and it is nice having something that's just the right size. So I'm going to make the call and make a concession here. And again, if the designer feels like this is important, we can always create our own icon in a custom icon set and pull that in instead. So the final part here is hiding these radio buttons and getting the spacing right. So let's begin by hiding the buttons. We're going to use the same selector to select the radio buttons here within the contact form, but we're not going to select just checked. We're going to select all of them. We'll create our brackets, and we'll hide this by setting the display to none. If we save this and refresh the browser, they go away, but we can still click these items to create the check. And we know that when we click this, we're affecting the radio because our selectors are looking for checked radio buttons. So it looks like the final thing we need to do is create the right padding between these. Now if we go back to the design, it looks like these are probably centered in the form with equal spacing between them. So if we go back to the browser, we can play with this a little bit. I'm going to select the surrounding div, and let's start by centering it. So we'll do text align center. Okay, so right now this is centering it in the browser rather than the form. That's okay, it should center as soon as we put it in the form itself. Okay, so now we need to add spacing between these. Now before, when we had a radio element and a label, it would have taken a little bit of work to add the right spacing so that we could have space between them, but also have consistent spacing between the outsides of the elements. But because we're dealing with 3 identical elements here, we can just add the same margin to the right and to the left. So I'm going to inspect one of these, and I'll make sure that we're editing our label selector here. And let's do margin, and we want the top and bottom margin to be 0 for now. And let's play with the margin for the right and left. So we'll do 20 pixels. That looks a little big. We'll go down a little bit until we get something that looks about right. Okay, so let's say it's 14 pixels. And because it has the same margin on either side, it will center as the browser gets smaller, or as we try to fit in a smaller space, like the space of our contact form. So for our label over here, we'll add margin, 0, and then we'll do px2 rem to use a relative 14 pixels. And then we also need to center this div. So again, this is the contact form type element, and we'll do text align center. And we'll refresh, and here we go. Fancy. Now let's wrap up this element by going to our index and putting all of these inside of our form. So I'll cut it and paste it right inside the form, save it, and refresh. And now the selections line up with our other elements.